Serious, people who've had sex with their ex-friend's parent. How the hell did you get to that point? What happened after? Friend's mom going through some tough times with her husband. Accidentally added one of our friends on Facebook. She started flirting with him and eventually they FK'd. After this kept going on for a couple of months. Dude decided to tell his friend, son, about it. At his house. The son cried. They threw hands at each other and everything was alright moments later. Don't really know what happened after that. Lost contact with both of them. My brother's best friend from high school dated my mom in his 30s. He had my brother really young. When she was barely 15. So when his friend was in his 30s. She wasn't yet 50. I will always remember the night he found out. They fought. And my brother's friend left the house. And got into his car. My brother followed him out. And punched him in the head through the driver's side window. He managed to go through the window and still connect with enough force to knock him out cold. My first serious girlfriend's mom used to text me every day after me and her daughter broke up. Just friendly stuff at first. Talking about music and other mutual interests, and I used her to keep tabs on what my ex was doing, because I was dumb 16-year-old kid. Eventually it led to her telling me how much I reminded her of her high school boyfriend that killed himself, and she went on to tell me she lost her virginity to him and how much she loved him. Then things took a turn. She started sending very sexual texts which turned into nudes and phone sex and plans to hook up. Eventually I ended up walking away from it all before anything really happened. I didn't think much of it back then, but looking back at it now. I was a 16-year-old heartbroken boy and she was a 40-year-old married woman. So that's pretty FK'd up to think about now. Basically groomed and taken advantage of by someone I thought was my friend. Edit. This is actually my first time sharing this with anyone. So thank you for hearing my story. One of my first girlfriends in high school. Her mom used to seriously tell her that she should give me her virginity. Often. Then mom started flirting with me. One day while at their house, mom grabbed me in the hallway and kissed me. After we split up, mom used to still call me every now and then. One time asked if I wanted to come over and hang out. I did and mom got my virginity removed. In my late 20s. I had a friend in a small mountain town in the western US. His mom gets separated. Moves in with him. She's mildly flirtatious with me. No big deal. Not enough to raise any red flags. Job changes and I move to the city. 90 miles south. He comes on weekends to party a few times. Normal stuff. Then he comes to party and brings her. At her request we have a late night fest while he's passed out in the next room. Major violation of bro code by me. But she asked nicely. No surprise we weren't friends after that. Bringing your single mom to a party 90 miles from home where you intend on passing out on the couch. What do you think she was going to do? Knit? A friend of mine's mom basically hit on a number of us in the group, and sadly it just became kind of a matter of time before one of us caved, and it eventually happened. He saw it coming, I feel bad for him. Semicolon. Recently divorced mid-30s hot mom and a group of 18 years olds. It wasn't me who did it. I went to HS with a kid whose mom was like this. She let him throw big parties and she would get topless in the hot tub with teenagers. It was extremely awkward because most of us didn't want to go in the backyard when she was out there because we didn't feel comfortable. Several of his friends had sex with her and one of them ended up dating her for like 5 years and moving with her to LA. It was very bizarre. A good friend of mine had this happen to her back in high school. She caught her, also high school aged, boyfriend assisting her 40-something-year-old mother, and it led to her mom and her stepdad's divorce. All while she was 17 years old. She still has a strained relationship with her mom to this day. We are 25 now, so this happened almost 10 years ago. I don't think you can ever get over that kind of betrayal by your own mother. I believe she still has a good relationship with her, now ex-stepdad though. Her mom is now dating a man her age. But she will always be a predator in my eyes that seduces her daughter's boyfriend. So gross. I used to babysit a lot for my ex-boyfriend's family. It's how I met him. He had a toddler sister when we were dating. Parents were split and I used to babysit for his dad when he had custody. I would watch his dad come back from dates totally rejected and broken. It felt horrible. He was a genuinely nice guy. Attractive. A little older, but I have a thing for older men. One night he got a little flirty with me and I got a little flirty back. I spent the night. It became a big issue the very next time I babysat. His dad expected sex now. His dad also started to get really touchy all the time. Like I was feeding his daughter in her high chair and he started groping me. Or I was changing a diaper and he had his hand up my skirt. I had to stop after he threatened to withhold my payment if I didn't blow him. That's how I FK'd my ex-boyfriend's dad. And now we know why he didn't do well on those dates. This reminds me of the mom of my cousin's wife. When her kids were younger, they used to bring home kids from school that had it really rough in their life. She would talk with them and help them. But one thing that was interesting she mentioned was that she was glad to have parents around who would initiate physical contact with them. She said she knew these youngsters needed physical contact since some of them had been feeling lonely or mistreated for a while. But she said she couldn't be the one giving it to them. Now reading these comments, I understand what she meant by that. I slept with my friend's mother at a music fest. Was very high on acid. We were all hanging out. Me. My two friends who were dating, we'll call them David and Claire. And Claire's mother. Claire doesn't feel too hot. So David takes her back to the campsite and me and her mother are just left to the festival. We get some drinks in. Do some dancing. One thing led to another. And yeah. Afterwards we just sort of chilled in my tent for a few hours before hitting the party tent. Having a wee cuddle. Claire actually walked in on us after we had finished and I was so high I didn't even really know what was happening. I just knew that I had done something very wrong. So the festival ends and we all go home, and of course the sensible thing to do would have been to try patch things up with Claire and never talk to her mother again. You will find, however, that I am not a sensible man. And proceeded to not only see her again, but date her on and off for 4 years. I hooked up with my student's mom. I was teaching an after-school program, so I saw her almost every week at pickup. Sometimes her husband would pick up. Yes, she was married, and we would talk a lot to the point that we became friendly. Well, I was going through a divorce and happened to bring that up one time, and she very quickly gave me her phone number. Put her hands on me. She was not being shy about it. Something like out of a movie. Next time I saw her, she asked me out to lunch and I said sure. We met up. Had lunch, she paid. And she went on to tell me about how her and her husband were not sexually involved with each other and they were free to see other people. We went back to my place and the sex was wild. That was the only time we hooked up though, as I started dating someone shortly thereafter. Her kid was one of those LFCK your mom Xbox Live kids. So I would just chuckle to myself when I saw him. I had sex with one of my best friend's mom. It was Thanksgiving and I was driving her back home and she confessed that she didn't have sex in years since she was a widow. I told her that I didn't have sex in months since I was moving. We talked a bit more and we sort of flirted, and once we got to her house, she asked me to come inside and we did the deed. Edit. I accidentally put dead instead of deed at the very end. That's my mistake. I did not FCK a dead body. My mum had a friend, and I was friends with her son. I had turned 16 in November and went to their house for a party over Christmas. I got drunk and passed out on the couch in the living room. I woke up to the house empty, apart from my friend's mum sucking my dick. That turned into a relationship for about 18 months. One afternoon my mum is telling me how shitty I am and how none of my friends can be trusted. So I asked her if she could trust all her friends. And she says yeah. I asked even Margaret. And then the truth came out. Most of truths anyway. Never spoke to my friend again. But I did have to fight some drug dealer friends of his. Apparently Margaret came round to my mum's house the day after and got a mouthful of abuse. I don't know what was said, but I'll guarantee that it was more about the breach of trust between her and my mum, and less about the sexual assault. My mum has never really forgiven me for it. BTW. I'm UK and age of consent over here is 16. A sleeping passed out person cannot consent. Didn't happen to me, but a classmate in nursing school. Her mom had met her best friend's father and they fell in love and dated for quite some time, mid-50s. Friend was 16 back then. Then the BF father broke up with classmate's mom and started dating classmate. She got pregnant about 6 times in a span of 3 years and always either had a miscarriage or aborted. Because he didn't want kids. Eventually he cheated on classmate with her mother. She forgave him and they've been married for about 5 years now. I just experienced an emotional roller coaster. Good God, the US is just waking up and the amount of predatory moms from the UK already is disturbing. Edit. Well, I was a horny guy. And my friend's mom was, well, available. Really? I'm not proud of it. It just kind of happens sometimes. And every time I felt shame. I don't know. Like I was betraying my friend's trust? Worst thing was, she was actually a friend of my mom too. So I kinda saw her on a regular basis. Oh, so it was on the regular for you. This kid's mom at his graduation party I went to high school with. His parents were rich and it was well known his mom was decent looking and dressed like she was in high school. But this kid always only had his close friends at his house. Until his graduation party. My close friend had a twin sister and we always partied together and she wound up with an older kid who had already graduated but he was cool and always hung out with us. So he comes to the grad party with us. Long story short, the older kid was found pants down with the drunk mom bent over the bathroom sink and the kid whose party it was. And the dad went nuts and chaos ensued. The older kid hit the grad party kid and took off. I heard that the mom wound up sleeping with another kid we went to school with a couple years later and they got divorced. I'll never forget that chaos though. That was a fun party. My sister was talking this one kid I didn't really care for. And ended up working with him at the job I was managing at. There was a woman working in a different area at that same job. I ended up having a one night stand with her after we had been flirting a bit here and there. Come to find out later that was the dude's mom. My sister would then use this as a comeback and say, well, your mom sucked off my bro. Was a weird time several years ago. All kind of moved away after a bit. Nothing much outside of that happened. PRN sites will be lurking in the comments section to find the next script. My partner had sex with her friend's mom. This was years before we met. But the way she tells it is that she was basically propositioned by her friend's mom as her mom had never been with a woman and wanted to give it a go. My partner obliged and said that her friend's mom was cool with it but realized she was definitely straight. They said goodbye. It never happened again. And my partner's friend will never know. Interesting that the top 20 or so comments a younger male with older female, and one older male. Is that really that much more common? Or is it more that young men like to brag about it while a woman feels shame for hooking up with a dad? I think the friend's mom thing might be more often fantasized about. I slept with a childhood friend's dad while visiting my hometown. Long story short, he's being divorced and I was browsing on a gay hookup app. It's a small countryside town so the only things to do are ketamine, sex or leave. He messages me and he clearly doesn't recognize me because I don't look the same as I did a decade ago. I recognize him and the entire time I'm thinking this is really weird, but I'm bored and he's relatively handsome and charming. As far as charming goes on Grindr lol. So I figure, hey, why not? And hindsight is 20/20 because the sex was fun, but the entire time I'm thinking this is my friend's dad. He has literally driven me to school before. Just left an overall odd feeling. My friend doesn't know and it's going to stay that way because we don't really talk whatsoever now, and it'd be weird to just pop up like your dad jackhammered my prostate and it was kinda weird. I went to a party with a friend who introduced me to a young lady a couple years older than me. We kinda hit it off with conversation. She explained to me how her and my friend knew each other and how frequently he'd hang out at her house. Explained how her and her mom basically lived alone because her dad was bedridden on a machine in one of the upstairs bedrooms. Long story short, she came home early one day to find that my friend was there having relations with her mom. That pretty much ended our newly budding romance, and my friend is now heavy into the church. Till there are a lot of predatory moms out there. This isn't me, but the drama became well known. I have an older friend who found out his wife was f***ing his dad. They were together for 10 years. Married for 6. She'd been f***ing dad for 8 years. This also puts doubt that my friend is the father of their 3 kids. He wanted a divorce and she tried to stop that from happening because she'd be the one f***ed because of biases in our system. It was gross to think about the wife and dad too. He was a fat, balding greaseball of a man in his 60s. I almost slept with my friend's mom. I was selling merch doing roadish tea for a friend's band. We were in the keyboardist's hometown. His mom came to the show and got drunk AF. Was buying me Irish carbons all night. She kept flirting with me in front of her son. I hit her boob with my elbow once while she was sitting next to me, and when I said sorry she whispered in my ear their double D's. She invited the whole band back to their house to drink whiskey in the hot tub. I was begging for it, but the drama got us lost on purpose and we never made it to my friend's mom's house. Almost though. All these accounts are of the typical dudes with their friends' moms. What about the women who hooked up their friend's dad? Left home when I was 14. Called home when I was 17 to check in. Some dude answered the phone I recognized. Immediately went into threat mode. Dude I had beef with in high school a year ahead of me was living in my house. Looks like every single post here is of a younger man with either someone's mom or dad. Not what the media would have you think. Not blood related, but a friend of my sister used to live with us and was a paying guest. We didn't have that much of a age gap, so we were basically attracted to each other. Even though she used to call me her brother. So, in a God-favored circumstances, we were alone and were watching a movie. Sex scenes were up. I think it was a Anne Hathaway. That pretty much had me boiling my testosterone. I made my move and 30 minutes later, I was on a third base. While I couldn't have sex, we enjoyed orally for the later 6 months. A friend of mine was seeing this girl for 3 months. A long story short, ended up seeing her twin sister at the same time. The twins' mum found out and he bedded the mother as well to keep her quiet. Mum of twins at the time was 37, twins were 18, he was 20. Twins' dad had died in a car crash 2 years earlier. We found out when he told us his dilemma, and his exact words were, "I poked the hole from where my girlfriends came out of." This was 20 years ago. When my SO was 19, he ended up dating his friend's mom. They were together for 10 months or something. Who cut plus styled his hair for years. He had been going to her since he was 16. He always thought it was weird that she'd give such long and sensual head massages during the wash, but didn't think anything of it until she invited him dancing on his 19th birthday. Well, my ex spent our entire relationship f***ing their best friend's wife. 15 years of it. They're getting married in September. Why marry me though? I'm fine, it's been years. But I'm still a bit miffed. Hung out with a good friend for a couple of years from age 18-19. Would go over to her house, etc. We had kind of a falling out, but I was close with her whole family. Few years later, accidentally reconnected with the mom, who had recently gone through a nasty divorce. Husband was abusive. Here we are, 4 years later with a ring stashed away. She's my best friend. And I know we're gonna get judged hard. But FCK it.